I discovered I'd been edited out of our family photos before I even knew there was a family meeting. My cousin uploaded 31 pictures to our group chat before anyone remembered I could still see them. A rented tent, a dessert table with my younger sister's name in sparkling sugar, my parents hugging guests like they were accepting an award for world's greatest relatives. 60 people. A live acoustic set, a professional photographer. All for her. And my name wasn't on any of it. I sat on my living room rug at midnight, scrolling through every image on mute, still wearing my work clothes. I zoomed in on my mom's smile, hunting for even a flicker of regret. It wasn't there. My dad had his hand on my sister's shoulder in a way he'd never touched me. The caption said, "Celebrating our favorite girl, she had no idea this was coming." But I'm the one who had zero warning. This wasn't an accident. My parents didn't simply lose track of me. I lived 19 minutes down the highway. I'd talked to my mother 4 days earlier. She asked about my work, mentioned my sister was overwhelmed with school projects, and said, "We're trying to keep a low profile around here." She looked right through the phone and deliberately concealed an entire celebration. A huge surprise gathering for my younger sister's 21st birthday. I was her only other child. Let that land. They didn't fire off a last-second text. They didn't claim a miscommunication. They behaved exactly as if I'd never existed. And the saddest part? I still shipped a present. I know how pathetic that sounds, but I was starving to prove I still belonged. I spent $200 on a gold bracelet she'd saved to her online wish list. I wrapped it myself, picked a card with painted daisies, and wrote the warmest note I could squeeze out of my hollow chest. To the sister who makes every room brighter, you deserve everything good. With all my love, always, I signed my name, kissed the envelope, and dropped it in the mailbox the next morning. No one phoned to say thanks. Instead, my sister posted a video opening the gift, tagging my mom, crying happy tears. She didn't tag me. She wrote, "Mom and Dad know me better than anyone. They accepted credit for what I'd bought, and I let them." For nearly a month, I fell apart. Every childhood scene came rushing back like a cracked dam. I recalled being 11 and overhearing my parents plan a father-daughter dance for my sister's school. There was no such event for me. I was told to be mature and understand that she needed extra attention. I remembered my 16th birthday when I got a supermarket cake and a card with my dad's messy signature, while my sister got a rented party bus and a luxury handbag for her 15th. The pattern was so clear, I felt foolish for ever pretending otherwise. I was the backup plan, the space filler, the one they loved exactly enough to keep out of the frame, but never inside it. But that surprise party was the final confirmation. They weren't just favoring her, they were actively constructing a version of life where I didn't appear. I was being deleted while still breathing, and the silence was the whole point. Then my grandmother called. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I almost ignored it. My grandma and I had never been close. She was my mom's mom, always reserved, observant. She spoke in measured sentences, never warm, never dramatic. But when I saw her number flash, my stomach tightened. I answered, and her voice sounded different, not weak, but sharp, like a letter opener wrapped in velvet. "Come see me," she said. "Alone, and don't inform your mother." I asked why. She said the words more slowly. "Alone. Don't tell a soul. Tomorrow morning." Then she hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my heart slamming against my ribs. I had no clue what was coming, but the force in her tone told me this wasn't a casual visit. This was an ambush, the kind that reshapes your entire existence. I didn't sleep. I ran through every possibility in my head, but my imagination fell short. I kept circling back to the party, the photos, the bracelet. This was connected. It had to be. I drove to her house the next morning, a small brick home she'd lived in for 42 years. The blinds were shut. The block was too still. I parked and walked up the path, my shoes loud on the cement. Before I could knock, she opened the door. She looked at me differently now, like she was seeing me for the first time, or like she was about to witness something she'd been dreading for years. She grabbed my wrist, not my hand, and yanked me inside. I'd barely crossed the entry when I heard the lock turn. The deadbolt, then the chain. She sealed us in. My breath caught. There was no physical danger here, but that lock sounded like a verdict. My grandmother walked past me into the living room without speaking, and I followed, because what else could I do? The air smelled like old newspapers and mint tea. She sat in a high-backed chair and pointed for me to sit across from her. I lowered myself onto the sofa edge. My hands were shaking. What she said next made my heart freeze. Your parents are not the people you think they are. She paused, letting the sentence hang like a blade. And that party wasn't just a celebration. It was a smokescreen. A toast to something they're about to do that will crush you. And I have the evidence. I couldn't form words. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She reached into the side table drawer and pulled out a thick yellow envelope creased at the corners, marked with dates stretching back 15 years. Your grandfather left you everything, she said. A trust fund, the land, the investments, every asset that side of the family ever built. It was supposed to be yours when you turned 25. That's next year. She tapped the envelope. But your parents have been quietly filing paperwork to shift it all to your sister. They've been faking signatures, manufacturing excuses, painting you as unstable, estranged, absent. They needed to justify cutting you out entirely, so they staged the party as the final family announcement. In 10 days, they're meeting with a judge to approve the transfer. And you would have never found out. The room tilted. The photographs, the deliberate exclusion, the gift I'd mailed like a devoted fool, while they were already writing me out of history. My grandmother's gaze didn't flinch. I've been gathering proof for months. Every false statement, every forged document, every email where your mother tells the lawyer you can't be reached and act hostile. It's all here. She slid the envelope across the table toward me. I didn't know if I should tell you, but then I saw those party pictures online and I realized they weren't just celebrating her. They were burying you. I stared at the envelope, my blood turning to ice. This wasn't a family. This was a conspiracy. And everything I thought I knew about my life was a fabrication. The envelope sat between us like a detonator. I reached for it, my fingers numb, and pulled out the first paper. A sworn affidavit from my mother dated 9 months earlier, claiming I had severe psychological issues and had refused all family contact. Next came an email chain with their lawyer where my father wrote, "We just need to make her appear unreachable. The judge won't look too closely if the file is clean." My stomach flipped inside out. Page after page of carefully woven lies, forged signatures meant to be mine, a fake mental health evaluation, a fabricated timeline of my abandonment. But what I saw next broke something permanently. There was a final petition summary, and at the bottom, a note in the attorney's handwriting. Client intends to transfer full estate to younger daughter. Celebration event scheduled to mark successful resolution. Celebration event. The party. The party wasn't about my sister's birthday at all. The cake, the balloons, the 60 guests. It was a victory lap. They were toasting the day they finally erased me legally and financially. And I had mailed them a present to applaud it. My grandmother stayed still. She let me drown in the silence of what I'd just learned. Then she said, "I didn't raise my daughter to be a thief, but she became one anyway. And I won't let her destroy my husband's final wish." She explained that my grandfather, before he died, had seen the favoritism, the cruelty. He'd changed his will secretly, bypassing my mother and locking the inheritance directly to me, to be released at 25. But my parents had been scheming for years to undo it. They just needed me to look crazy, and gone long enough for a judge to sign off. And I would have never known. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. Something inside me switched off like a blown fuse. I looked up at my grandmother and asked one question. "What can we do?" She smiled, not a warm smile, but the smile of a woman who had been waiting for this moment her whole life. "Everything," she said. That night I phoned my mother. I kept my voice steady. I asked if we could have dinner soon. She hesitated and said, "Maybe next month, sweetheart. Things are just so crazy right now." The same line she always used. I pushed lightly. "Is everything okay? You looked so happy at the party." There was a pause, a micro-silence I used to mistake for distraction. Now I recognized it for what it was. A calculation. Oh yes, it was lovely. Wish you could have been there. Just a last-minute thing, you know. Lie after lie, so smooth I almost admired the performance. I said goodbye, hung up, and opened my laptop. The next 10 days were a blur of exact moves. My grandmother, whom I'd always seen as a quiet older woman, turned out to be a retired court clerk with deep ties in the family law system. She knew which judge was assigned to the hearing. She knew the clerk who'd processed the fraudulent documents. And she knew exactly how to file an emergency motion to intervene. We hired a forensic document expert who confirmed the signatures were forged. We collected every contradictory statement my parents had made to other relatives about why I was absent. My grandmother recorded a phone call with my mother where my mom casually mentioned, "We just need this thing signed next week and it's all done." She thought she was talking about a car title. She was actually confessing to fraud. The morning of the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse in a navy dress my grandmother had bought me. She held my arm and said, "Walk in there like you already own everything. Because you do." I walked into that room, and the look on my parents' faces is something I will replay for the rest of my life. My mother went pale. My father actually stepped backward. My sister, who'd been smiling, froze with her mouth half open. They had no idea I knew. They thought this was a routine rubber stamp proceeding. The judge, an older woman with piercing eyes, looked up from the file and said, "We have a new motion to address. Miss, please step forward." I didn't speak at first. My lawyer, a woman my grandmother had personally chosen, handed the judge the folder we had assembled. The evidence, the forged documents, the emails, the recorded call. The judge read for 10 minutes in absolute silence. When she finally looked up, her voice was cold metal. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan, you are aware that presenting falsified evidence in my courtroom is a felony, correct?" My mother started stammering. "This is a misunderstanding. She's been unstable." The judge cut her off. "I have a forensic handwriting analysis here. I have recorded admissions of intent. And I have your own mother sitting in the back row, prepared to testify against you." My parents turned around. My grandmother raised one hand in a small wave, and the room seemed to tilt. What happened after that was a chain reaction I couldn't have stopped if I'd tried. The judge didn't just deny their petition. She referred the case to the district attorney for criminal investigation, fraud, perjury, elder financial abuse, because they'd exploited my grandfather's estate while my grandmother was still alive. The court froze all contested assets immediately. My parents were escorted out by a bailiff, not arrested on the spot, but clearly warned they were under active review. The news spread faster than I ever imagined. My cousin, who'd posted the party photos, was the first to call. Hysterical. They told us you'd abandoned the family. They said you were dangerous. I let her cry. I didn't comfort her. Within a week, my father was placed on administrative leave from his firm pending the investigation. My mother's social circle, the same women who'd attended that party, began to pull away. The photos from that night became evidence, not memories. My sister, the golden child, lost the car they'd bought her with estate funds that weren't legally theirs. She sent me a text message, not an apology, but a demand. How could you do this to us? I never replied. I never will. The legal consequences were brutal. My parents faced indictment 8 weeks later. The plea deal required full restitution, a criminal record, and the permanent loss of any claim to my grandfather's estate. My grandmother took back control of the property and moved it into an ironclad trust, one I now manage. My parents were forced to sell their home to cover legal fees. My sister had to drop out of her private university and move in with a distant aunt in another state, because no one local would take her in after the truth came out. The people who had celebrated my deletion were now the ones being scrubbed from every guest list, every family dinner, every Christmas card. They lost their jobs, their reputations, their standing. My mother wrote me a letter begging for forgiveness. I read it once and burned it over the kitchen sink. The revenge wasn't something I fueled with anger. It was simply the truth finally allowed to speak. I stood in that courtroom and let the facts destroy them. And when it was over, I walked out with my grandmother, drove to her house, and ate peach cobbler while she told me stories about my grandfather I had never been permitted to hear. The family I thought I had was a lie. But the family I found in that betrayal, it was real. It was small. And it was mine. If this story hit something in you, hit like and subscribe to Winds of Thought. We share real stories of betrayal and justice every week. They didn't just lose me. They lost everything they tried to steal.